Greetings to all our viewers. I'm Soumitra Dasgupta from Nasscom, and as you are aware, we do these chats with CEOs and senior leaders from the industry very often under the aegis of Leader Talk. Today, we have a very interesting leader with us. He is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Tredence, Mr. Shub Bhowmick. It's a great delight for me as well as for Nasscom to welcome Mr. Bhowmick to this session, who brings in 21 years of consulting experience with an emphasis on technology strategy, M&A integration, and operations improvement. He has been instrumental in establishing and running high impact projects in a wide range of industries. His key asset is his ability to break down complex problems, identify risks, assess business value, and then provide recommendations on remediations and value attainment. He holds an MBA from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management and a Bachelor of Technology from Honors in Chemical Engineering from IIT BHU in India. And as the company likes to say, they are a data science and an AI engineering company. Core theme is solving last mile problems in analytics. The last mile is defined as the gap between insight creation and realization. So, given the backdrop, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Bhowmick once again. And Mr. Bhowmick, if you're ready, we will shoot out the first question.
Thank you, Soumitra. Glad to be here.
Great. So the first segment we would like you to please address is what kind of transformations are you witnessing in the AI industry, and to what extent did the pandemic precipitate it? All yours, Mr. Bhowmick.
Yeah. So, even before the pandemic, right? Let's take a step back and talk about the data analytics industry. And AI is basically a newer, a new variation of the same thing, right? It's about finding value in data, right? So AI has been becoming the core of across the Fortune 500 world, the core of the company's operating model. This has been going on for a while. The business operating models are more and more digital operating models, right? You cannot have a business today that is not digital. And any digital business process is going to create data, and then when you have data, you have an opportunity to look at that data, analyze that data, and continuously improve the business process, right? Hence analytics. So going back to what I said at the beginning, AI is becoming the core of the company's operating model. To your question about COVID, the pandemic, right? How has the pandemic precipitated this shift? I think it has significantly accelerated this shift from traditional to digital, right? Companies that were already digital native, right? A lot of companies around where I live. By the way, I live in the Silicon Valley, California. So a lot of companies around these zip codes, they're already digitally native. So they're doubling down, right? They're finding newer, more innovative business models. And the traditional enterprises are also trying to catch up by rapidly investing in AI, data, and related technologies, because they realize that if they don't, then they will be left further behind, right? So that's number one, right? Another thing, Soumitra, that I've been noticing is, there is more top-down C-level support for these initiatives, right? In the past, sometimes Obviously there would be small teams of PhD data scientists and artificial intelligence experts sitting in a lab in a corner of the building and running interesting experiments, right? But these POCs, these proof of concepts, these pilots have struggled to get productionalized, right? And interesting and sometimes successful, AI-driven experiments have unfortunately lamented and they've died painful death due to lack of funding and support from leadership. And this is primarily because these were seen as experiments and non-essential to the mainstream business strategy. I think that is changing now, right? And that is also something I'm seeing has been accelerated because of the pandemic, due to the pandemic, right? AI and data-led innovation is not just about scraping the surface, for marginal improvements anymore. It's become core to these companies' abilities to survive and thrive as a business, right? To differentiate and invent new offerings. If you ask me, I think data and analytics now actually has the power to move the needle, right? And today's C-level officers recognize that, right? Or they are being pushed to recognize that by their investors and the Wall Street, and they're willing to invest in that. So those businesses are now fundamentally shifting. Um, yeah, incremental cannot work anymore. It has to be core to your business. I think that cognizance has now come into the world of AI-related business funding, and I'm very excited about that. I hope I answered your question, Shomitra.
Yes, perfectly. So, Mr. Bhowmick, let's quickly move on to the next segment, which is more your company specific. So, the genesis of Tredence and how you are differentiating. What initially attracted you to co-found a company in the field of AI, data science, and the like?
Sure, sure. So, by the way, is the connection okay, Shomitra? Because I
Yeah,
see my internet seems a little unstable. Okay.
yeah. For
So
me,
let me okay. So let me give a little bit background about Tredence, right? Because I think that will help me segue into your question. So, Tredence, you as you mentioned in your introduction, we are a data analytics and AI service provider. We do this. Our differentiation is, we focus on the last mile adoption of insights via business process intervention, and basically to reduce the noise and waste, right?
yeah,
That sometimes comes into the picture as far as AI driven business adoption and impact is concerned, right? And we are working for some of the largest retailers, consumer packaged goods companies, telecom providers, hoteliers, etc., and who are leveraging our services to solve some of the biggest problems, right? We started 8 years ago, headquartered in Palo Alto, California, and we are one of the fastest growing analytics companies that is on a mission to change the world in a small but meaningful way, right? So now your question regarding what attracted me to co-found this company and how are we really differentiating, right? So my journey in data analytics started when I was working with a Chicago-based analytics consulting company called Diamond Consultants. So around about I think 12 or 13 years back, I was involved in a data analytics practice which Diamond had created, and I was deeply influenced by this experience. Right, I realized for the first time in my life how significantly data management and then the use case that you're building on top of that can actually have an impact, right? Then around 2010, I briefly worked for another analytics company called Mu Sigma, which was also a very inspirational experience for me. I was able to see how data analytics services is not just an add-on service offering, but it is the core and the primary and basically the only service offering that it was for Mu Sigma, and how Mu Sigma was able to create a very interesting business model around that, right? And how this industry was starting to attract some really good talent, right? Nurture them and grow them into future analytics leaders, right? Um, but then I was also wondering if there's a better way, Shomitra, right? If there is a better way, a more efficient and more impactful way to deliver this value, right? See, back then in the analytics industry, most of the companies, most of the providers relied on a manual process, right? A manual when a value chain which involved pulling data typically into throwaway Microsoft Office based data files, using Excel for the analysis, maybe some bit of SAS, and then PowerPoint based summarization and delivery of that analysis, right? And remember, this is 10 years back, right? There was very little cloud back then. Salesforce was much smaller. It was basically a sales automation platform. AWS was small, and there was no Azure and there was no Google Cloud, right? We hadn't yet seen the advent of the hyperscalers, right? So around the time we started, 2012, 2013, we saw an opportunity to start a different kind of analytics service business, right? Where we kind of brought the essence of analytics, right? Business analytics, which is basically the focus on business insights, right? But combine that with engineering, right? And hence deliver the insights in a more efficient, in a more value driven, adoption focused way, right? Instead of relying purely on business analysts and that manual process that I just talked about, we took a more technology centric approach, right? I.e., using big tech to automate portions of this value chain, and create greater scale and speed in insights delivery, right, and adoption of these insights. Obviously, since then, we have all seen the cloud-based platforms and hyperscalers that have emerged. Especially in the last 5 years, we are seeing a lot of production workloads, right, that are now moving to the cloud. And we have been developing cloud-centric capabilities for a while now, right, to deliver our analytics services, right, with focus on adoption and shortening the time to impact. So that's how we are differentiating, Shamitra. Now, the funny thing is, I know you asked me a question about analytics and data science, but I am also referring to cloud. And I think the reason is, these two things are very much coming together, right? Cloud and data analytics, these two technology ecosystems are very much intertwined and will continue to be so, in my opinion, as enterprises continue to invest in cloud native AI capabilities.
Even at
Let me take it
Nasscom,
pause there. Yeah,
true.
go
Even
ahead.
at Nasscom, we are emphatic about the combinatorial power of all these technologies. It's always in combine that brings us that 10x or 50x kind of growth
Yeah,
with this
yeah,
technology.
yeah. And some of the other benefits that are associated with cloud, right? The whole pay as you go model,
Yeah,
the whole concept of, where you are not looking to make a large upfront investment and waiting for the ROI, right?
right.
And even I've seen the new age information technology leaders, right?
Yeah.
The chief data officers and the chief digital officers and chief AI officers, which are now becoming common titles in Fortune 500 America. Um, these guys are also, embracing this new model, right? I'll tell you, probably more than 60 to 70% of our work nowadays happens on the cloud, right? which was definitely not the case in the first few years of when we started the company.
Great. Let's move on to the next segment, which is about the shifting customer expectations during COVID,
Yeah,
or we're still with COVID, so the last
yeah.
15 months.
Yeah, unfortunately, we still can't use the past tense when we refer to
Yeah,
COVID, especially in India.
yeah,
But fingers crossed. Well, let's hope we'll get there soon.
yes.
The customer expectations are definitely shifting, right? Um, I mean, and I can also see that companies are now shifting from the last 12 months of the pandemic chaos, right? Sort of to the post pandemic strategies, right? And this transition, Shomitra, is going to be very interesting.
Mm,
And it's not going to be easy because it's not exactly the same thing, right? um, This trajectory, I think, will be different for everyone. And how to make this transition as smoothly as possible, right, is something that industries have to figure out, right? How do you shift your mindset from survive, right, which is what we were, which is where we were 12 months back, right? I know personally in Tredence I was in that mindset, right? So that mindset is now going to shift from survive to thrive, right? How do you really benefit? How do you take advantage of all the reopenings and all the growth rates, very encouraging growth rates that the numbers that are coming out, right? US Fed is projecting close to a 7% GDP growth this year, right? And that's these kind of growth rates in the US economy is really unheard of, right? Um, Obviously, there are other lot of follow-on concerns around labor shortage and inflation, etc. But let's not go into that. But yeah, I'm very excited. I'm very hopeful that the as the world starts reopening again in 2021, and this will continue through the next 1 or 2 years for at a minimum. How the shift continues to happen, and how Tredence, as a data and analytics service provider, is able to add value, and in the process also have a good runway, right? So I'm super excited about that, Shomitra.
So, let's move on to something more specific about data science. How is data science, AI helping enterprises innovate and drive faster value realization? And you may want to touch upon specifically on innovation because it's slightly broader, it's taking a broader perspective everywhere. So you might want to just touch upon that a little more emphatically.
Sure. See, technology and data analytics has been playing a major role, I think, in improving people's lives for a while now. It has helped create new and interesting business models to meet consumer needs. And what I believe will happen over the next few years is that the scope, the scale, and the speed of this impact will significantly accelerate, right? So what do I mean by that, and how is that going to impact us as a service provider in this space, right? Because we are data science and AI engineering service providers, right? um, so if you look at technology leadership today, right, and compare that with the kind of expectations that these leaders had from from consulting companies and advisors like us, right? The mindset was a bit more custom, right? That, hey, I have this problem, let's build this on-prem capability by combining various analytics, big data, by developing a big data foundation such as Cloudera, or I mean, if you go a few years back, maybe Oracle or Teradata, and then build a BI layer on top of that. Traditionally, which used to be MicroStrategy and business objects, and then about 10 years back, we started seeing the advent of Tableaus of the world, right? But basically, an interactive dashboard that sits on top of that foundation, right? But a lot of these stacks were still being developed on-prem, right? Uh, what has happened, Shomitra, in the last 5 years or so, it basically accelerated in the last 5 years or so, is cloud, right? I keep coming back to cloud, right? Cloud has democratized a lot of technologies and capabilities, right? It has made things comparatively easier for technology leaders to develop these solutions nowadays, right? It's a very interesting development, right? See, the hyperscalers and the platform providers have a lot of these built-in capabilities that I was just talking about, and these are available for plug and play, right? So we as service providers, we especially, I think some of us who are, we're looking at the future and looking at the trends, we are starting to um, focus more on developing repetitive capabilities, which we call as accelerators. And these accelerators are aligned with the business units that we have in the company, the verticals and the horizontal practices, and these accelerators are meant to deliver the value to our clients in a much more in a much more the speed to impact is being shrunk significantly, right? Again, let me try to summarize what I'm saying, right? So in the past, when we get a project as a consulting vendor, we would kind of start with the design thinking. We will do all of that, but we will also build all those capabilities from scratch. But in the new world of cloud, in the new world of these hyperscalers and ecosystems and platforms, where these analytics solutions are available for plug and play, the focus has now shifted to more industry centric, right? Domain centric capabilities, which we are trying to develop in advance, right? At least 30, 40, 50% of those capabilities in advance, in terms of the data model, in terms of the data ingestion pipelines, in some of the use cases that sits on top of this foundation. And then we share these accelerators with our clients, and they're able to start with a starting point, uh, which is basically not started from scratch anymore.
Right.
And I think this creates a very interesting convergence opportunity, and it also creates an interesting opportunity for companies like us, because we are able to differentiate our offerings not just on the basis of the skills and the competencies that we have, but also these accelerators that our leaders carry in their back pockets when they go into conversations about creating value and having an impact with the technology
Right.
leaders and clients that we work with.
Right.
I hope that makes sense.
Yes. Yes. That's a great insight, really. And
Now, let me also
yeah.
talk a little bit about innovation, because I know
Yeah.
you asked about
Yeah.
innovation. I
Yeah.
did not touch upon that,
Yeah.
right? So innovation is a paradigm, right? Again, there's a gamut of innovation, and for us, innovation is generally about making incremental improvements, right, in the way we take our service offerings to the market, and then how do we incrementally, move the needle, right? So these accelerators that we I just talked about, right? We are actually consolidating the portfolio of all our accelerators, and we have created a platform called Tredence Studio.
Right.
By the way, we are going to launch that today. And what Tredence Studio is a representation of what Tredence does as an innovative company, right? And the way these ideas and these accelerators are sourced is, in some cases, it is on the basis of the learnings and the experiences that our verticals and our practices are having, right? Harvesting some of those ideas. Second, we are actually strongly encouraging our talent, right? Our guys to participate in this journey by contributing with kind of their power of imagination, right? So we have created something called a Bright Idea Portal, and our employees can go into this portal. If they have an interesting idea, they can enter that idea and put that idea through that portal. Then that idea goes through an evaluation process. That evaluation process is fundamentally a two by two to assess the feasibility and the alignment of the idea with the broader commercial objectives that the company has. And then, based on that evaluation framework, if it makes sense, then it goes into a development phase and it becomes something real, right? And when this happens, Shomitra, so it's not just about innovating in isolation, but you're bringing the organization along with you in this innovation journey, right? You are helping them feel part of this creation process, right? And at the same time, the organization also benefits commercially, right? Because it's now able to differentiate leveraging these accelerators. So it's a win-win for everybody. But yeah, so that's what innovation looks like at Tredence.
So then, let's sort of uh, let's move on to the, sorry about that. We just let's move on quickly to the next segment, which is about role of pragmatic AI. The transparency, ethics, explainability, responsible AI. There's a whole lot of discussion on today. It's sometimes said to be a double-edged sword. So your response to that, please.
Yeah. See. I think the question is how do we continue to have big tech and AI and all the technologies around those? How can we continue to leverage these things to drive meaningful change going forward? Um, these massive changes we are seeing around us, they're very exciting, but while being exciting and very significant, what you mentioned, it also can sometimes be a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
So they do pose new kind of challenges for leaders who have to make decisions regarding investing in and adopting these technologies, right? And in addition to biases ethics, and compliance issues that you referred to. There are other concerns like security, cybersecurity, etc. Right. So my philosophy on this, Shomitra, is as follows. I believe in the power of good. I feel that these technologies will continue to make a huge difference to our lives. Um, some of these challenges are also real, but as these technologies evolve, the same technologies will get refined, and it will continue to address some of the concerns that you raised, right?
Yeah.
See, fundamentally, 99.9% of the people do not want to do bad, right? They do not want to do ethically the wrong things, or they don't want a biased algorithm to make wrong decisions, right? Um, but maybe that is happening today. We are having these cases of false positives and false negatives because the technology is still evolving, right? Because maybe there isn't enough data to train the algorithms today. Maybe the algorithms are not accurate enough to the point we can completely eliminate these errors, right? But as we continue to refine these algorithms, as the processing power continues to scale, right, as we have more and more data to make the algorithms even more robust, I do believe that these concerns will get alleviated along the way. Now, what we are doing as a company is we are also thinking, about how to be a part of some of these solutions, right? We have created an explainability module as part of one of our platforms, which is called ML Works,
Yeah.
which is actually meant to uncover some of these biases in a more meaningful way. We are also looking to create a cybersecurity module to address some of these challenges that Fortune 500 America is facing, and we are also looking to create a sustainability and clean tech practice, right? Which also is a which we didn't touch upon that, but that's also a major topic of consideration for a lot of companies around the world today, right? So by creating these horizontal practices, by hiring experts and leaders, and setting up some labs and innovations within those practices to continue to develop those capabilities, is how we are looking to kind of contribute our contribute meaningfully as far as solving these and addressing some of these problems you mentioned.
Right. It's very encouraging to hear from you that you believe that you said something like 99 point whatever number of people don't really want bad things out of AI, and it's a very encouraging statement that you made, and thanks for that. It reiterates the power of good in humans. So,
Yep.
with that, let's move on. We're nearing an end, but would you like to talk about some of the industry specific AI solutions, and maybe a couple of them which you think should be highlighted?
Uh, sure. I mean, I'm assuming you're referring to things that we are doing
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
3D
yeah,
context, right?
yeah,
So, for us, industry-specific solutions falls into a few different categories, right? Number one, we are developing a few platform level solutions, right? ML ops. So we have developed an machine learning operations platform called ML Works. This is something we launched a couple of months back. We are encouraging not just technology leaders and decision makers, but also citizen data scientists to go to our website, download POC version of this solution, and play with the various features that we have included in the solution, such as explainability that I just earlier talked about, such as drift, right? How do you understand, and monitor the drift that sometimes happens over time due to shifts in data or due to shifts in other variables in the model, because of which an algorithm loses a certain efficacy over time. So, how do you continue to monitor that using this platform, right? And continue to keep it at a performance level so that it is meaningful from a business decision making perspective. In addition to that, aligned with our verticals, we are also developing a number of different capabilities. For example, our retail vertical has developed solutions to understand the customers, right? Especially as we continue to see a lot of shift going from offline to online. How do you see all your customers in one platform? Continue to monitor these shifts. Continue to monitor the various data science capabilities to that to look at the life cycle of your customers through the activation, upsell, cross sell, and retention phases of this journey, the customer journey. Our supply chain practice has been developing a number of different solutions. For example, we have developed something called supply chain tower, right, which is again meant to accelerate the ability of a chief supply chain officer in a large organization to build a core supply chain foundation with some relevant insights and dashboards that sits on top of this. And since we have most of this pre-built, you can quickly get yourself, you can basically quickly create this capability in a reasonably short period of time. But at the same time, you can develop this on a cloud ecosystem that you already have, your technology organization may already have sanctioned, whether it's Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, or Amazon Web Services. Right. So these are just some of the examples. If you want to see a more comprehensive portfolio of everything that we have built, I strongly encourage you to spend some time
Yeah.
on tredencestudio.com, TREDENCE studio.com. That's where all our solutions are being showcased. And as we continue to develop more solutions in the future, we'll continue to leverage this as a channel to sort of publish the latest and greatest that our internal innovation team is working on.
Right. And you said you'll be launching it today, the Tredence Studio.
Yes,
Good
yes.
luck. Good luck on that.
Thank you.
So, with that, we come to the last segment of our discussion, which is
Sure.
about how are you preparing your employees for the future of work. From you can look at it from a productivity angle, or learning, or
Yeah,
health, or the overall employee experience. If you want to just touch upon these areas.
yeah, definitely one of the front and center topics for me and the rest of the leadership team in Tredence. Um, so my thinking, and I may differ from some of your audiences, my thinking on this is a little bit old school, Soumitra, right? I actually still believe in the power of spending time together, right? Making the team camaraderie, the team spirit, and your ability and the way that camaraderie is nurtured in a physical setting, right? You cannot replace that in a virtual environment, right? um, Especially in an industry like consulting services, right? Professional services, where, if I may add one more nuance, see, we are in the apprenticeship business, right? We are, our responsibility is not just to hire lateral talent from one place to another, but our industry, and this includes us, this includes all the other consulting companies, whether it's a McKinsey, Deloitte, or Accenture or Infosys, we are all investing in creating talent, right? We hire people from campuses, and then we invest in them, we train them through classroom courses, and then with, on the job training, via on the job training, and so that over time, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, they increasingly become a more, well-rounded data scientist or a data engineer, right? Now, our ability to create this talent effectively requires us to be, to the extent possible, in the same place physically, right? Just a simple example, right? If, let's say, Shomitra, you are in my team, let's say I'm in your team, you are my manager, right? I'm running a piece of code. I'm having some difficulty because I'm doing it for the first time. I am 6 months out of college. I've just joined Tredence as my first job. And in the pre-pandemic world, you would be sitting next to me, right? And I would say, hey, Shomitra, can you help me with this? And you would probably just, bring your rolling cubicle chair to my screen. You look at my code quickly, and you would say, okay, make this change, and you'll be fine. And within seconds, I will be empowered with that knowledge, right? In this virtual world, that's not as frictionless as it used to be, right? Because for obvious reasons, I don't mean to belabor on those reasons. Hence, it just does take away a bit of that air from our ability to continue to thrive as a business. So here's what I'm getting to. I think the future of work will still involves spending time together physically. I also envision a situation where, maybe if not 100%, but maybe X% of the work will now continue to happen virtually. Because what we've also found out that in a lot of situations, an in-person conversation could be avoided, hence the drive through the traffic or taking the flight to meet somebody across the country. Those things can be avoided because it's as simple now to have a Zoom meeting and have a conversation, right? With this, definitely at a certain level of efficacy, right? So these two, I think, best of both worlds will come together. I don't anticipate a fully virtual world, but at the same time, I also anticipate that there will be a bit more virtual than what we used to have in the pre-pandemic times.
Great. So that's been such an insightful conversation with you. You really touched upon some very interesting ideas, especially on innovation, AI, explainability, and the kind of work that you're doing. And finally, you ended with the future of work and best of both the worlds. So I think on that note, on behalf of Nasscom, let me thank you for your time, Mr. Bhowmick, and wish you all the very best. Especially today is a big launch day for you. So good luck once again, and thanks so much for your time. It's really been a pleasure speaking to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I would like to sign off.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.